Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 6 p.m. here in Cairo. Time to have a look on the latest stories from Channel 2. I'm Abir Mitwali. I'll be presenting the news bulletin. President Abdel-Fattah el-Sisi says parliamentary elections campaigning violations are being investigated solely by the NEA. The National Election Authority holds press conference on the first phase of the parliamentary elections details. And Ukraine plans to buy up to 100 Rafale warplanes and air defense systems from France. Welcome back. The news in detail. President Abdel-Fattah el-Sisi said he was informed of events that took place in some electoral constituencies where individual parliamentary seats are contested. In a statement on his social media account, he said such events are being investigated solely by the National Election Authority, which he said is an independent body according to the law. He called on the NEA to be very accurate with its investigations and verifications of the events and appeals, and to take decisions that satisfy God and honesty, reflect the true will of the voters. He called on the NEA to prioritize the transparency of the measures through reassuring that the delegate of each candidate obtains a copy of the list of the voters from sub-voting committees. He said this would guarantee that the MPs would be true representatives of the people. He said also that the NEA should not be hesitant to make the right decision when the true will of the voters cannot be achieved, even if this means totally or partially concealing this phase of the election in one or more constituencies. He said in this case, the election can be re-held later in these constituencies. He called on the NEA to reveal the outcome of the investigations and measures taken with regard to electoral campaigning violations to achieve effective monitoring of the election process, and so it does not breach its legal frame nor be repeated in the coming phases. The president concluded the statement saying, "Long live Egypt, long live Egypt, long live Egypt." The National Election Authority's Chief Judge Hazem Badawi said vote irregularities made in any polling stations during the first phase of the House of Representatives election earlier this month will be investigated thoroughly. Holding a press conference on Monday over details related to the first phase of elections, upon recommendations of President Abdel-Fattah el-Sisi, the judge said the results of the investigation will be announced with the results of the vote scheduled for Tuesday. The first phase was conducted in 14 governorates. Meanwhile, candidates in the second phase of the election are proceeding with their election campaigns. The vote is to be held next Friday and Saturday for Egyptians abroad across Egyptian diplomatic missions. It runs on the 24th and 25th of November domestically. A joint Egyptian-Saudi naval drill in the Red Sea was concluded on Monday with the participation of Navy forces from Jordan, Sudan, Yemen, and Djibouti. Dubbed Red Wave 8, the drill involved conducting different shooting exercises by special forces from participating countries, as well as drills on confronting attacks by the rapid light boats. The United Nations Security Council is set to vote Monday on a U.S.-drafted resolution that draws lines for Gaza Strip future after the war. The latest version of the draft law, which has been revised several times, mentions a possible future Palestinian state. It endorses the U.S. President Donald Trump's Gaza peace plan, which allowed for a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas to take hold on October 10th in the war-racked Palestinian territory. If authorities, the creation of an international stabilization force that would work with Israel and Egypt and newly trained Palestinian police to help secure border areas, protect civilians, and secure humanitarian aid corridors in the Gaza Strip. In addition, the resolution would authorize the formation of a Board of Peace, a transitional governing body for Gaza, which Trump would theoretically chair with a mandate running until the end of 2027. Once the Palestinian Authority has carried out requested reforms and rebuilding of Gaza is underway, the conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood, the draft says. Meanwhile, Palestinian factions renewed their rejection to any items on the U.S. drafted resolution over Gaza that allows disarmament or threaten the rights of self-defense and resistance for the Palestinian people. A statement released by Hamas Group described the U.S. resolution's call for the establishment of an international force in Gaza as an attempt to force an international mandate in Gaza, asserting the rejection of the presence of any foreign military troops or the establishment of international bases inside the territory. A Palestinian man and a child were killed by Israeli fire in 2 incidents in the Gaza Strip in a new Israeli breach of the ceasefire. The child was killed by Israeli fires in Gaza City, eastern district of Shuayat, while a drone attack in the northern Beit Lahia town killed the man. Israeli air raids also were heard in areas east of the southern Gaza city of Khan Yunis, while Israeli forces carried out demolitions of residential buildings in the Gaza City eastern districts. Still in Gaza, the 74th Gaza-bound aid convoy began entering into the Palestinian enclave through the Rafah land port on Monday. The convoy, organized by Egyptian Red Crescent along its Zaid al-Izza initiative, was on its way to Qarm Abu Salim and Auga border crossing points. Its trucks are carrying over 9,200 tons of urgent humanitarian aid to the Palestinian territory as part of Egypt's continuous efforts to provide food and medical aid and relief materials to the population of the Strip. The convoy trucks are also loaded with food, medical relief aid, as well as fuel to meet the needs of the Palestinian people. Foreign Minister Badr Abdel Ati stressed the unwavering Egyptian stance in support of Sudan's unity and maintaining its national institutions, underscoring Egypt's full rejection to any attempts to partition Sudan or harm its stability. In a phone call with his Sudanese counterpart, Muhyiddin Salim, Foreign Minister Abdel Ati renewed his condemnation to the violations witnessed in Fasher City recently, asserting Egypt's support to the government led by Kamel Idris. Top diplomat Abdel Ati also affirmed the importance of unifying regional and international efforts to back a comprehensive ceasefire and paving the way to launch a political process that achieves security, stability, and security in Sudan. The Sudanese army said it controls Sayalia area north of Kordofan. This came as fierce clashes broke out between the Sudanese army and rapid support forces who are trying to move forward to Babnusa west of Kordofan in central Sudan. Sudan's air forces launched strikes targeting RSF military equipment and vehicles deployed in the city. The RSF militias continued military deployment in areas of Mogald, Tabun, moving to Babnusa. At an air base outside Paris, France, President Emmanuel Macron and Ukrainian counterpart Zelensky signed an accord to Kiev to acquire up to 100 Rafale fighter jets and other hardware. The visit to France is Zelensky's 9th since Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. We have more in the following report.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said on Monday he had signed a deal with France to obtain 100 Rafale warplanes as he seeks to bolster the country's long-term military capacity to fight Russia's invasion. Zelensky is visiting Paris for talks with President Emmanuel Macron at a time when heavy Russian drone and missile attacks on Ukraine have increased in recent weeks, and Moscow has reported ground advances in the southeastern Zaporizhzhia region. Zelensky told reporters he had ordered 100 Rafale fighter jets. Zelensky was speaking after he signed a letter of intent with Macron in front of a Rafale jet and the French and Ukrainian flags at Villa Koblai military airport. The Élysée confirmed the number without immediately giving details on whether the Dassault-made jets would be transfers from French stocks or purchases. Some could come directly from French stocks, although the bulk could be longer term and part of Ukraine's efforts to increase its long-term fleet to 250 warplanes, including the US F-16 and Sweden's Gripen. Operating the advanced jets would take time given the rigorous training program for pilots. There have been talks for several weeks to see how France could provide more military support for Ukraine's air defenses, although Macron's government is grappling with political and budgetary instability, raising questions over how much France can actually do. Macron pledged last month to offer more Mirage fighter jets after initially promising to deliver 6 and a new batch of Aster 30 surface-to-air missiles produced by European group MBDA for the SAMP-T air defense batteries operated by Ukraine. The two sources said Zelensky's visit could also produce deals for more SAMP-T air defense systems from existing French stocks or through long-term next-generation orders, including for missiles and anti-drone systems.
Ukraine's emergency service said the Russian aerial strikes on Monday killed 5 people and destroyed a kindergarten in eastern Ukraine. 3 were killed and 13 wounded in a strike on a residential area of Balakia in a front city in the northeastern Kharkiv region, and 4 children were among those wounded. A later Russian strike killed 2 other civilians in the Dnipro region. Earlier, Russia's RIA news agency said Russian troops captured 3 villages across 3 Ukrainian regions. And to Bangladesh, former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina said political reasons were behind the charge brought against her at a tribunal in Dhaka earlier on Monday. A special tribunal sentenced Hasina and one of her close aides to death on charges of crimes against humanity for her crackdown on a student uprising last year. Hasina and the former Home Minister fled to India last year and were sentenced in absentia. The verdict comes as the country still grapples with instability after Hasina was ousted on August 5th, 2024. Bangladeshi Nobel Peace Prize laureate Muhammad Yunus took over as the head of the interim government 3 days after her fall. South Korea's defense ministry said on Monday that it has proposed talks with North Korea's military. In a televised statement, the defense ministry said the talks are to discuss setting a clearer boundary along the military demarcation line between the 2 Koreas. South Korea's deputy defense minister for national defense policy said the aim is to avoid the risk of potential military clashes, adding that the South and North have different perceptions of the boundary in some areas. Welcome back, and to some business news. Egypt's stock market indices fluctuated in the trading session on Monday amid selling and purchasing operations by optimistic investors on both directions. Analysts said that investors were looking for deals in both sides in the trading session. So profit-making sales by Arab investors and investment funds reached high rates as the purchasing operations by local investors and foreign investment funds. So the benchmark EGX30 index shed 0.35% to close at 41,065.75 points, but the EGX70 index for small and medium businesses gained 0.33%. The EGX100 index also gained 0.23%. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Thanks for watching, and please stay tuned for more to come. I am Abir Mitwali.